So as we come together here, we can just let ourselves go inward and just know that we're here for the healing. It is really a sacred purpose. It's actually our only purpose, to use whatever is in our experience to come deeper into the truth of God. So as we begin by going inward, just let our mind relax. And we can let our body relax, maybe letting go of any tension you feel. And as this is a space for opening and unwinding, you can even say yes within your mind. Yes to the shift. Which is really a yes to the peace that's beyond any troubling thoughts or experiences. And as we're willing to go within, we literally go with and in. We go with spirit and in to whatever is asking for a shift. It can help sometimes to think of taking Spirit's hand, to remember that you're not alone. And again, this is an opportunity to be present. And being present is a present. It's a present for you. This path of healing is about the willingness to open all the doors. Let spirit come into all the dark and hidden places, which are then no longer hidden. You bring all of that forward. What is a dark place that has been opened to the light? It's simply a place. Without all the shadows, it loses the fear, loses the idea that there's something wrong. So we can go into anything that shows up in our experience, in our mind. And this is the willingness that we practice, that we cultivate, that we expand as we keep doing our lessons and our forgiveness work. As the willingness expands and deepens, becomes like a blanket that just encompasses everything and covers everything in our whole life. But before that willingness is so deep and so full, there are some pieces that we're leaving out of it. And we're basically telling spirit, I'm open to forgiving some of these things, but then we have these things maybe we're not willing to hand over. And it's helpful to really know that that's how it is. We can only really handle a problem once we know that it's there. And that's how it was for me around the special relationships of, my family of origin. There was a point on the journey where I realized I needed to let Holy Spirit guide even those relationships, how frequent the contact was, even like what I should say, and also what I didn't need to talk about with them. I've been raised to believe that a kind thing, if someone is talking to you, especially someone you care about, if that you just listen to whatever they have to say. Like that's the kind thing. But sometimes what they have to say isn't helpful for them. It's not helpful for you. At some point I had to start saying, I'm really not interested in talking about this, or I don't have time for this right now. I need to focus on other things. Because that supposed kindness, just listening to whatever they wanted to talk about, was actually not really kind. The Course talks about it as false empathy. Just kind of going along because, you know, that's what you should do. But I would leave those conversations feeling kind of drained and feeling kind of bored and maybe a little slimed. I thought, well, that's the price I pay for being a good guy. Oh boy, that's not good. That is a belief in sacrifice right there. The sacrifice to live up to an idea of a persona, of a personality. And I tell you, Barret in the past, very good guy, very, very nice guy. Everyone would say so. But was it truly helpful? I mean, that's what I started to have to look at. Was this way of behaving and relating and having conversations truly helpful? Once I started handing these things over to Holy Spirit and really trusting and praying and listening, I had to see that it was not, that the kindness I thought I was giving by just sort of listening to stuff that wasn't really for me, I didn't need to be listening to, that in truth, that was not kind. I was unkind. I was unkind to myself, unkind to the truth of my being. And it actually wasn't kind to the person who was saying these things that didn't really need to be talked about. But looking at and challenging these patterns, these ways of being, often feels very upsetting. I resented this guidance at first. I thought spirit's not loving. This is not a nice way to be, to tell someone that I don't really want to hear what they have to say. Hmm. There goes my good guy self-image. And that's really what I was pretty attached to, this concept of who I was and how others perceive me. Hmm. Should I live myself according to some idea of who I should be? I mean, I lived my life that way for many, many years. I wasn't even conscious of the kind of burden that was for me. I wasn't really aware of it until I shifted, until I started to say these things that felt more truthful, more authentic, more helpful. And then as the old way of being melted away, I could see how much energy and focus I'd been putting into playing the game of Mr. Good Guy. Oh, that's not a good game. Not a good game. Not a good game for anyone. And when I first started to get this nudge to do things in a more truthful, guided, helpful way, I thought it was unkind. I thought this guidance was mean. But to be in your authentic truth is never unkind, even if some people have a reaction to it. Now, this doesn't mean that you just kind of blast anyone because you think that's what is truthful. No, all of this can be communicated with love and compassion. But to step out of the old pattern, to step out of the box that you'd been kind of cramming yourself in, is not a mean thing. I've had this sort of conversation with people over a number of years, and people almost always have a reaction to it because it brings up in their mind the idea of them changing their patterns, how they are with people, the things that they're doing that are not really their authentic guidance, but they think they're supposed to. They think this other person needs them to be like this. Ugh. That is not a fun way to live. But almost everybody knows it. I think almost everyone has these patterns in their life. The question is, do you want to keep having these patterns in your life? Do you want to keep doing the same repetitive thing because it's what you think is expected of you? Or maybe you're told it's expected of you. Is that a reason to be less than completely authentic? I mean, I don't think so. I kind of get this feeling as I'm talking about this that these kind of old patterns, these old patterns of conversation and interaction, they're like a snake skin it's too small. You know, when a snake is growing, it gets to that point where the old skin is too small. It's tight, it's constricting, it's confining. And then there's this process of starting to loosen from it. Maybe it's still kind of there for a bit, but You're starting to get free. And then over time, over practice, kind of taking the new path, eventually that snake skin is completely off. It's left behind. It never has to be used again. I mean, it's impossible. You could not fit back into the old snake skin. It's too small. So it's helpful to think, where am I confining myself in my life? You might already have a few ideas as you're listening here, a few thoughts of ways that you're playing a game that doesn't really work anymore. Growing up, we had a game, Monopoly. I think maybe some or a lot of people know that game. It's kind of an awful game. I mean, it always ends with someone really being upset. Someone is the victor, someone is a loser. I found out recently that game was made by like an anti-property person. She made that game to prove how awful property ownership is. And it really proves it over and over again every time you play. One person might be happy because they won, but everyone else is miserable. At a certain point in my life, I realized I didn't have to play that game anymore. I didn't ever have to play Monopoly again. That was a good realization. And you could have that realization around this too. You don't have to play that game. You don't have to play small. You don't have to fit yourself in an idea of who someone else thinks you should be. It's really okay. You can have the conversation. You can allow them to maybe not be happy about it because they might not be. Or maybe you'll be surprised and it'll all be good. But it's all right. It's all right to let go of the unhappy status quo. I mean, just to hear those words, unhappy status quo. No thanks. Not interested. Because kind of another piece of all this, another angle to see this is that when you're withdrawing your investment in these old patterns, these old, we call them obligations, traditions, maybe is another word. Sometimes that one needs to be offered to spirit. But when we withdraw all the energy we've been putting into maintaining an old way of being, what do we get? We get all this availability, all this energy that was put on this thing, this way of being, this way of communicating or interacting, now is open for what? Open for inspiration, open for guidance, open for joy, open for something new. What is it? Who knows? Spirit knows. Spirit knows what you're in store for, and spirit is cheering you on. It might seem like a big thing to kind of have a talk with someone like this, take a step like this. But spirit sees it's just a little tiny step. Spirit's kind of giving you a little supporting nudge, saying you can do it. You'll really be glad you did, even if there's some worry, some fear, thinking about what someone else might think. But what a heavy way to live your life, worried about what someone else might think. Ugh. I mean, just saying those words, I feel heavy. So again, what part of you is still in the old snakeskin? What part of you is still held tight to something? And again, you're really being cheered on here. You're being cheered on. You might think, oh, I think I need to say something to someone. I might need to share about how I feel with them. And this is the loving, supportive, yay. just just to say you can actually have that talk. You can actually tell them, send a message, whatever is the right helpful thing. This is also about a deepening of trust to your inner guidance, your inner knowing. You want to trust and you can trust, and you're getting better and better at being trusting. Sometimes in a movie, there's a scene where the main character is kind of like needing to get somewhere, and then all of a sudden there's this big gap, and they have to make a big leap. In the movie, of course, basically they always make the leap. They always take that big step and they accomplish it. But of course, to do it brings up some feelings. It brings up some, I don't know, anxiousness or unsettled feelings. But we're talking about breaking out of an old way of being, releasing an old constricting belief. This is how things should be. And why? Often because there's an idea this is how things have always been. And I mentioned the word tradition before too, because traditions are often just an old way of doing things too. They're not sacrosanct, they're not sacred in and of themselves. So we come back to wanting to be truly helpful. And that really means being unattached to how things unfold. Of course, we are often guided, we can be very guided in a certain direction. And we do our best to follow the guidance and take those steps. And simultaneously being completely open to however things unfold. And as we practice this, our experience starts to get more and more gentle. All of these old confining ways of being are falling away like the old snakeskin. You know, it's actually really beautiful. New snakeskin. It's like shiny and fresh. But obviously, this is all metaphor. As we let go of the old constricting thoughts and feelings, the new, bright, happy, joyful place in you gets to shine. So here at our center, we're in a very quiet place, very beginning of our devotional retreat here. And we've been exploring how this sort of big period of time is helpful to allow things up to heal. So if someone has something they'd like to release, something to hand over for healing, you can share. You can raise your hand.
Yeah, thank you so much for this talk about being nice, listening to things that really don't feel right to listen to. It's actually felt like this the exact right timing that you were talking about this. Now it's my parents. Yeah, I could really so feel that this is such a defense that my whole seeming being is this identity of the nice Eva, and it's my safety in the world. I can really feel that. If I'm just nice, then I won't be abandoned. And I can feel such a terror, such a fear in my belly with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really my prayer, to let that go. And to really come to my true identity. Feels very scary, but I really want that. I really want to let it go. This attachment, this identity.
Well, I think you're in the right place. Yeah. And I hear your prayer, and Spirit hears it too. And I would just offer it's actually much less fearful than it feels. Like there's actually no unsafety in doing this, even though you experience that it is unsafe. That's what the ego will tell you, that belief that you need to keep this nice person mask.
Yeah, otherwise I'll lose the whole Eva. Yeah.
Maybe you do need to lose the whole Ava.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Just feel the words, keep going. Keep going. Yeah.
Keep going.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Ooh. Yeah, I felt like you spoke directly to me. And and what came up was this feeling of this stuckness around my daughter. And and I'm aware that I need to speak up. I need to say something to get out of this stuckness. And I have what came up was this I need to stop hiding. And there's some fear. there's definitely some fear of her reaction. And I can see I have the belief that she wants to hold on to the old Solveig, the old mom. So
That's
I
good
like
to
to
see.
offer that belief up. That's
Oh,
probably my belief.
right.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just have this desire right now, right here, right now. I really want to be honest and communicate with her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe to start with, it's a letter that you don't necessarily have to send, but a letter that you write to her.
Yeah. Yeah. I just feel like when the words comes in, it kind of goes into a head thing, and I go into, yeah, I can see every time I've tried many times for like 2 3 months or something, last 3 months, it, and it feels like it goes into this old habit of that the something about not wanting to trigger, yeah, something. So I consider what words to use, and yeah, kind of a pleasing, I guess. Yeah.
Have you thought of the idea that nothing is wrong? Like in your relationship with your daughter, that absolutely nothing is wrong?
I have tried. It, I have experienced at some points the feeling that nothing is wrong, but most it's not most of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I am aware of the judgment around it, that it's wrong. Not having any contact is wrong.
Yeah, I think that's a big piece of this, because purity of heart doesn't need a phone call, or it doesn't need a message on a phone. I think you're starting to step into this idea that real connection is beyond these sort of worldly communications.
Mm. Yeah, then it gets stirred up, because when I have had contact with her, it easily gets this kind of where it's a lot of contact, like it's either no contact or a lot of contact. So that's yeah. So whenever it goes into the form, how is it in form, it gets confusing, and I can't figure it out. I don't know. I can't figure out how to do this.
Oftentimes someone would ask David, oh, how's this person? I haven't heard from them in years. David would respond, oh, they're doing great. And then his friend would say, oh, did you talk to them recently? He's like, no. And then he'd say, well, how do you know that they're great then? He said, because they're great in my mind. They're doing great in my mind. This is your shift here, Solveig.
Yeah.
You think that there's some problem, but that's just a perception.
Yeah. And I even make it even like I think that she thinks there's a problem,
And that's your problem.
That's even, yeah. Yeah, because she thinks this is wrong. Yeah.
If you needed buy-in from every person on the planet for you to be happy and peaceful, you would never be happy and peaceful. You don't need them to have their stamp of approval on your life or on anything about you for your peace of mind.
Mm.
I mean, this is what passes for love in the world.
Mm.
If you give me your stamp of approval for my life, I'll give you my stamp of approval for your life. That's like a horrible bargain,
Yeah.
because then all of a sudden the stamp might be revoked at any time for any reason. And then things are not good.
Yeah, I do want her acceptance somehow. Yeah.
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 What if she never accepts you in your life that you're could you be peaceful anyway?
I'm willing to try.
And I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. I'm just
Yeah.
encouraging you to look at this belief that your happiness is in someone else's hands. That is a recipe for suffering.
Yeah, it's not working. I know that it's definitely not working. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Enjoy your exercise.
Thanks.
Yes, thank you. It's not like me really to raise my hand and say anything, so that's why I thought I should do it. And
Beautiful.
and there is this feeling of embarrassment also around expressing, especially since I don't know most of you. But yeah, just as what you said and what everyone said really resonates. You know, as usual, it feels like this is, yeah, a message for me as well. I think what's mostly on my heart at the moment, it's I have also a daughter, a teenage daughter, who lives with me every other week. Right now, she's with her mom, and she's really struggling with depression and anxiety, and she even made a suicide attempt earlier this year. And this has, of course, stirred up a whole range of emotions in me as well. Yeah, it's good to see that, of course, to have it brought up, but it can feel rough at times. And you know, I've been aware of my own sort of depression, or rather, you know, apathy or fatigue, and under that is a layer of anger. Um, and I think that's why I want to be a nice guy. You know, it's I want to hide the anger, and I can't always do that, especially with my mom. You know, I'm not particularly nice with her. You know, the anger comes out, and my daughter's very sensitive. I try to hide the anger for her, but she can feel it, of course. And when I'm grumpy, you know, irritated about something. So yeah, it feels like I want to be authentic, but then, you know, when I let the anger out, it feels like I people are put off. You know, I distance myself from them. They don't like it when I get angry.
Mm-hmm.
So it feels safer to try to hide it. And
Yeah.
yeah, and what I've become aware of also this year, actually, it's pretty new for me, is that under the anger is sadness or grief, really.
Mm.
It's yeah, that's what I'm starting to feel, and like the feeling that, you know, I'm an angry, grumpy person. I don't want to be perceived that way. and it's quite sad.
Yeah. The good news is that even as these are feelings that you have, they are not you.
Mm.
And as you start to really get that, then it's going to feel more acceptable to allow your emotions. And like you said, how you allow the emotions, it matters. And I think that when something is suppressed and suppressed and suppressed, and then it erupts out, it blows up, yeah, it's not going to feel so good for you or for others.
Mm.
But there are ways of tapping into even anger that are not attacking.
Mm.
We already mentioned journaling here in the group, and that's a really good outlet for emotions. They can come up, they can be acknowledged and felt, but they're not used against anyone.
Mm.
Another thought is to have a conversation with your daughter, perhaps. Just say some of the things you just shared here. And talk about that you have anger and there's sadness and grief underneath it, and you want to allow it up, but you don't want it to be harmful to anyone, and even just to kind of open that up in a general way, it can be very helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I sometimes say that when people, at least in English, I don't know if it's the same in every language, but in English you say I am angry, and it's like you're making that your identity.
Mm.
I am angry, I am anger. This is kind of what you're saying.
Mm.
But it's very different to say I feel anger, or I have feelings of anger. It's still acknowledging that these feelings are there, but it's not claiming it as what you are.
Mm.
Or to say it a little differently, it allows for a space of you being the watcher and the feeler of your feelings, instead of being the feelings themselves.
Yeah.
And that little gap is crucial in genuine shifts.
Mm.
It's different than just sort of being flooded by the emotion and carried away with it. I sometimes think of it as the difference between being in a river of feelings, or being on the bank of a river.
Mm.
Because you're still experiencing the river if you're standing on the shore of the river, but it's not the same as kind of being in the water, which can sweep you away. But it's also different. The repressing is more like running away from the river over the hill, so you don't have
Yeah.
to look at the river. That's not so helpful. So I'm trying to practice, like, how can I be with the river but not swept up by it?
Mm. Yeah, that's the trick, really.
And it's accomplishable.
Mm.
And being open about our emotions, having these kinds of conversations is helpful in doing that.
Mm. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing.
Um, yeah, hi.
Hi, good to see you here.
Thanks. Well, just wanted to say hi, and at the moment, like the topic of relationships not coming very strong for me. But I could relate to when you shared about playing small.
Mm.
I can definitely relate to that, and that topic does show up quite a lot for me. And there's definitely a feeling that I'm compromising myself, but that it's no longer has to do with other people, like there's no one that I'm trying to please anymore, or it's like it's basically it's my own mind, my own mind that has this kind of deal, kind of like a deal I made with myself, you could say, or with maybe even with the world. Kind of, okay, hey, I'll play small and you keep me safe. Okay, like I wouldn't show up too much. I wouldn't get involved too much. I'll kind of hide in the corner, but don't get me, don't get me too messy. Don't get my life to be too messy, kind of.
It sounds
I
pretty
wouldn't
sad.
I wouldn't stir the water too much,
Mhm.
Yeah, in a way it is, because I think it's kind of like for years it works well, sort of, this mechanism. But then there's like this, it's kind of like a silent depression in a way, because you don't fully live who you are. You're
Mhm.
not fully in your expression. And there's a feeling of compromise, of a big compromise. And the thing is, like, I have no one to blame. My parents have died, and there's no one telling me what I can or can't do anymore beside of my own voice in the head, you could say, no? So who's to blame? So when you don't have anyone to blame, you kind of like look and ask myself, so why? What is that? And
And
it's like
maybe, yeah,
huh?
maybe no one needs to be blamed.
No,
Even as you start to take responsibility for this kind of way, this choice you've made, you don't then have to blame yourself even. You can just realize that it's not what you want to keep doing. And I think
yeah,
when you have that insight, it leads you to the next question, which is, what is that? What what does that lead to then? If I'm going to stop playing small, or I want to stop believing this idea that I need to, yeah, kind of diminish myself in order to be safe, then what? And I think just to be curious and wondering, like, okay, what's behind that door? What's behind that curtain? What's the new expanse that I will see?
I consider there's fear there, of course.
Mm.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like in a sense it feels like so silly, like like there's like these are just beliefs. It's just so silly, like it's like kind of there's a wall, and the wall is not real, but you still believe the wall is there. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah, and that's sort of your healing opportunity, is to ask for help, and really knowing that the wall is not there, not just intellectually but experientially.
How do I do that?
Yeah, well, I think it's really to ask Holy Spirit for that shift in you, because a part of you clearly knows it, and you already have a desire for it, but you want to actually deepen that desire, because when the desire is very deep, the healing will just unfold.
True.
And I think even to allow a shift of how you think about this, as oftentimes the mind wants to see, oh, there's this thing, it's a big problem. But to open into shifting that into, this is my next opportunity for opening. This is my next chance to release something so that I can be more authentic. And those sorts of thoughts are supportive, they're encouraging to this opening.
It's like I hear this small voice in me inside say, it's okay, it's safe, it's okay, it's safe, it's okay. Like a reminder. Can I remind myself? Can I remind myself? Can you remind yourself? Can you remind us? That's like this sort of like just this one breath, like, and it's safe. This one breath, and it's safe. Like, and each time, can I just take this one breath and say, it's okay, it's safe, you know? Because it's like this one moment, right? It's just this one moment. It's not, you know, like the decision is in every moment, right?
That's it. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you
And the
for.
story is the ongoing, right? But the moment is just here, just now.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you stepped up and shared a bit.
Thanks.
Yeah, good to see you again. Yeah, and we can take that message with us as we wrap up this satsang, that the choice is in every moment. The choice for peace of mind is right now. We'll be continuing these satsangs even as our devotional here will continue as well. So our next gathering is Wednesday evening, 7:30 p.m. Spain time. I look forward to connecting more and more. Yeah, lots of love to all.